So the first style guide that we're going to start with is Modern Language Association with the MLA. Again, this is the one that you're probably going to use the most often in your English and literature classes, or if you're taking a foreign language. MLA is really common in the humanities. So first I want to show you how to use OWL Purdue. This website is just fantastic for learning how to do the citations, seeing all the differences within citations, such as, how do you do books versus periodicals versus web sources? What do you do if there's multiple authors? What do you do if there's no author? All of this information is going to be on OWL Purdue, as well as how to do the in-text citations. And then they provide a sample paper as well as points on how to do your PowerPoint formatting or how to do a poster formatting. Anything you might actually end up using in your class when you're needing to cite anything will be typically found on OWL Purdue. So let me go ahead and take you to that website. All I want you to do is when you get into your internet, you're going to do OWL Purdue. I would probably recommend doing a search for whatever citation guide you're looking for. In this case, we're going to do MLA, because otherwise then you're going to have to kind of click through OWL Purdue and find which one you're trying to use. So when you do the search just like that, OWL Purdue MLA, it's going to be one of these first ones. I'll probably recommend just clicking on the very first result. So this starts off with just kind of giving you some general information about how to use MLA. In the case of MLA, it's called a works cited page that goes at the very end of your paper. And then it kind of gives you some just really basic information about how the citations are going to be styled and formatted. So what I've actually found easier rather than just scrolling through this is to just come over here and do a search. So like I said before, we're mostly going to be focusing on books and periodicals. So for MLA, you want to come over to MLA Works Cited page, books, or periodicals to really learn how we're going to be doing citations. And we're going to get to this in more detail in the next video as well, so I'm not going to focus too much. But you'll kind of see that it gives you some really basic information about how the formatting is done. You want to make sure that you're using commas instead of periods. You in between publisher, publication date, and pagination, there are still periods in your citation. You no longer need to say what it is. For example, is it a book? Is it a periodical? That's no longer necessary, but it was necessary in an older edition. And then particularly for when you're doing an online resource, they prefer that you use the DOI rather than the URL. Use whatever you can find on the page. Don't go out of your way trying to find a DOI. Use the URL if you cannot find a DOI. And then it just kind of gives you, and this is really confusing, so I apologize, but this is the general format for any citation with MLA. Go ahead and just ignore that and scroll straight back down to okay, what does a basic book look like? What happens if you have one author? If you have more than one author, what happens if you have two or more books by the same author? So let's say you are writing a paper about Shakespeare and you're citing multiple of his pieces of work. How do you do that kind of citation? And so on. So same thing when you look at the periodicals, electronic sources, anything that you need to be citing, you just kind of go to the side over here that makes the most sense and then scroll until you find the one that you're looking for. As for in-text citations, they are pretty much fairly basic. You just want to come up here to MLA in-text citations, the basics. And for MLA, you pretty much are going to be using the author's last name and the page number for where you got that citation from. So in this case, just for example, we're looking at Language as a Symbolic Action, Essays on Life, Literature, and Method by Kenneth Burke, published in 1966. When you're doing that citation, you actually have two ways to do this in text. If you mention the author's name in the sentence for example, human beings have been described by Kenneth Burke as symbol using animals, then your in-text citation, that's what this parentheses in, just requires the page number for where that quote came from. However, if you do not say the author's name, in this sentence, human beings have been described as symbol using animals, then you need to include the author's last name in your citation. So if you don't have a author, if you don't know who wrote the article or the web source that you're looking at, for example, if you pulled a resource from the CDC webpage, then instead of using the author's last name, you want to, for the CDC example, you would actually use the CDC as the author. It's a corporate author. But if it just came from like a random website, in this case, they pulled from the impact of global warming, from climatehotmap.org, then you just use a shortened version of the title in your parentheses here. For web pages, you obviously don't need to use a page number because there generally are not page numbers on websites, but you just want to make sure that you are citing whatever source you use for your research. So if you're doing a paraphrase of something that was written, or if you take an exact quote, you need to make sure you're citing where you found that information. Okay, now finally, the last couple things I wanted to show you was the fact that in addition to doing your citations, there is a specific way to actually format your end product, such as formatting your paper, formatting your PowerPoint, formatting your poster, etc. All of that information is also found over here in the side. So because you guys are typically going to be writing papers, I definitely recommend coming down here to Mla Sample Paper. And this will just kind of walk you through how to actually format your paper. So over here, what does your heading look like? Your name, your professor's name, what class is it, and the date. MLA writes it number, month, year, and suggests that you don't abbreviate the month. Make sure that up here you are doing your last name and the page number. And then everything should be double spaced in MLA. And you just want to kind of scroll through this and make sure that you are citing everything, but formatting everything properly and according to the MLA formation prescribed. So then if you come down, you can also see the works cited page. So how did they write the citations for everything in this paper? And then, if you have to write a PowerPoint or make a poster, those are over on the side as well. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the PowerPoint presentation so you can kind of get an idea of what it will look like. And they give you a sample of a PowerPoint here. So you can kind of click through and see how they do the document format, in-text citations, and the works cited list in your PowerPoint. So just kind of take a look at this. Make sure you're clicking through everything that you need for your class to make sure that you are formatting and citing everything properly so you aren't being docked any points.